Today I'm talking with Jimmie Whisman of the podcast Crime and Sports, and he's going to tell us all about how he monetizes his podcast. Stick around. Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Shannon Hernandez. I go by the Shan Man, and I am a broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast producer. Today, I want to talk to you about monetization of your own podcast. And forgive me for looking the way that I do. I literally had just gotten back from the gym when I did this interview with Jimmie, and I don't think you guys really care. You're just here for the content, right? So I want to jump right into my interview with Jimmie, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what it takes to create a podcast like his, and of course, the monetization outlets that he has created for himself in terms of his podcast. So we'll jump on over to that interview, and I hope you guys enjoy. So here I am. I'm here with Jimmie Whisman from the podcast Crime and Sports. How you doing, Jim?
I'm well.
Great. Not bad, man. Thanks for coming by and doing this interview with me. I really appreciate it. Not a problem. And so I get a lot of questions asked by podcasters, like, how are you monetizing? And that monetization is kind of like, it's like this invisible thing, this cloud that's in the sky that no one knows.
So hard to chase it.
Anything about it. But you guys have been monetizing on your podcast yourself. So let's go ahead, start out. The name of your podcast is called Crime and Sports.
Crime and Sports and Small Town Murder. We do two podcasts. They're both started on the Audio Boom platform. And you're a self-starter. You're making a podcast on your own with zero help, really. You're doing it all on your own. You've got to be able to chase the monetization. You've got to chase the ads. You've got to chase the people. And unfortunately, a lot of that goes through third-party advertisers, third-party advertising bookings. That's the problem with podcasting today, in my opinion, is that there's a middleman between you and your money. So what you want to do is chase down at least one that's going to give you ads and give you a good CPM rate, which is the rate per 1,000 downloads that you're going to get in return. And you have to think about, are you there yet? You have to think about down the road, how far you're looking. What's the word I'm looking for?
It's your word.
Your future plan, your future forecast. You have to think about how far you're going to get with what you have. So you have to be very self-aware, but you also have to be self-aware in the other end, not just self-aware to know what you're worth, also know what you're not worth. Because you're not going to go chase down ads and tell them you're going to get X amount of downloads when in reality they're much lower than that.
And I read a great article the other day online where they were talking about, based off of CPMs, like can you make money off of a podcast that doesn't have 1,000 downloads?
Yeah. Probably not. You're more looking for whatever your niche audience is, whether you're a comic book podcast or a pinball podcast, whatever your niche is. Hopefully those listeners will be charitable enough, because there's that avenue as well with Patreon or PayPal, where those people can donate to you to keep your podcast going. You can't be looking to have a lavish lifestyle with 1,000 downloads a week, because that's not going to happen. The reality is, if you're looking for a get rich quick scheme in podcasting, look somewhere else, because it's not going to happen. It takes time. If you're not going to put everything you have into the vehicle that you've presented to all of us, you're not going to get very far.
Now let's kind of give some context to like your podcast, Crime and Sports. Let's give context to like why you are getting paid. Okay. So tell me how many downloads as of this recording, because you've been on my podcast, and back on that podcast that we talked about, you had just crested like 1 million downloads or something like that. What are you at now, and how has that warranted more of an opportunity for monetization?
So we're over 6 million today, and we crested 1 million in March. We're now sitting in September. So in 6 months, we've created another 5 million downloads. Now that gave us the opportunity, as being we were under a year contract with Audio Boom, we were able to get into contract with Podcast One, who they are now our advertiser finders, but also too, they will promote. And that was the key that got us to sign with them, was that they're going to help promote us. Whether they put a commercial that we pre-cut for them on other podcasts at the beginning, in the middle, at the end, wherever they want to put it, and then they're going to book us on other shows. That's kind of what the network model is to grow within your podcast, because when you're successful, they're successful. That's what you want to look for when looking for a team team is find people that are going to put as much energy into it as you are. And if you're going to put tons into it, why not have somebody behind you that also is going to put in
Passion. You're
Right.
looking for people who are equally as passionate.
People that give a damn.
Right. So tell me about the Patreon model that you and James have created for yourself. You have now put out on your podcast, you say you can now donate to us in order to create these things, to create these podcasts, because let's just kind of break down what you and James do. And you've told me about this in my podcast, so people who haven't heard this in my podcast, you can say it here on YouTube. James does most of the work in the day. Like, James has no job other than to create your
James's
podcast.
job is podcaster,
Right.
podcast producer, podcast investigator, I guess.
Yeah.
He researches everything that we do, and in reality, it takes him 40 hours a week to create 2 podcasts that are one's an hour long, one's 2 hours long, so 3 hours of content each week. Takes James 40 to 50 hours, sometimes more, depending on how in-depth the crime is that we investigate.
Right, and that's not uncommon with podcasters. When I was at Podcast Movement a few weeks ago, people had told me that that's what it takes. It takes that amount of time to create the content that you're looking for, and so that's why I'm asking you with this Patreon model. You threw it out there. What expectations did you have whenever you created a Patreon, and will Patreon work for everyone?
We had a very low expectation because James being the cynical one, and I kind of feed off him when it's ideas that I have no idea about. We were very, very skeptical about how it was going to take and how it was going to help. But if you look at other podcasts and their Patreon pages, you'll see that a lot of guys are making a lot of money. And I don't know that it's making a lot of money. I don't know that it's earning a lot of money, depending on what they're putting the work into. But the opportunity to have people donate to you and fund your project is incredible. There are people that make $25,000 a month from Patreon. We don't make anywhere near that.
Right.
We make a decent amount of money to help get James's health insurance going and keep him rolling, keep food on his table. Being that I still work, I still have a job because I have kids and a wife that I rely on me. None of them are making any money. Right. So the bulk of money is going to go to funding your podcast because it's not cheap. Time is money, and when you're sitting around reading time after time a new article, or you have to subscribe to some newspaper.com article thing where you can find more archives of newspapers. This stuff costs money, and it's difficult to keep going if you're not making any money. So I understand that aspect, but you have to think about the audience that you're churning this out to. Is there enough to keep it going? It's very similar to any really business. Anything that you create, whatever widget you put out there, you've got to have a market for it. So you have to really, self-awareness is key to the whole thing. You have to know what you're worth, but you also have to know what you're not worth.
Yeah, and I think that there's a saying out there that goes, for every single discipline that you do, there's multiple rewards with what you do.
Absolutely.
So with crime and sports, the reward has been these now 6 million downloads. You now get gifts in the mail from people. Just yesterday on your Snapchat, I saw someone sent you a Louisville Slugger,
a little mini bat, like what bikers bash mirrors off of cars with, or you have it in your back seat, tucked under the seat, just in case somebody gets crazy. That we have one of those little mini bats. It's a original Louisville Slugger, and it has not just the crime and sports on it, it's burned into it. It's unbelievable.
So for all the hard work that you put into your podcast, let's just kind of take the monetization model out of it. I mean, you're getting multiple rewards for a single discipline that you are creating every single week, which, you go in, you help James with the recording process. James does a lot of the work, but still it's a good balance of what you guys both do, because you're able to really bounce off of James, and this reward you get not only is through the multiple listeners, but you're getting these gifts. You're getting opportunities, being asked to go out and do podcasts, speak.
Not just that. So James and I both were comedians before we started podcasting, and the whole idea of starting the podcast was to just build our own audience and speak to people that want to hear us talk and get to know us and feel comfortable with us, and then from there be able to branch out and go do shows with them. And now it's starting to actually happen, where we're going October 7th to LA to the Hollywood Improv with Dan Cummins, who also does a podcast called Time Suck. Listen to it. And that's because of the podcast, because we work together in terms of we'll talk about his podcast, he'll talk about ours, and try to branch the audiences together. The whole teamwork aspect, it seems like podcast communities are generally very inclusive, very friendly, very really just want to include everybody. And it's not really possible because there's so many podcasts and there's so many different thinking people that don't have the same audience that you're going to have. It's tough to actually find somebody that you gel with. But because of the podcast, and we found Dan, I performed with him before either of us started podcasting, and now since starting the podcast and being friends through comedy, we're able to go do comedy shows with him also. And we're not just he's not booking us just to be funny. Right. We're also bringing an audience there, which is really, it's not just helpful for him, it's helpful for us to realize that we can go somewhere else and do a live comedy show, not just podcasting, because we're not podcasting there, but we can go do a comedy show and we can bring people to it that want to see us.
Multiple opportunities, single discipline, multiple opportunities. That's what I think is a good takeaway here. What's the single most important takeaway that you can give podcasters? What's the single most important, I guess, advice you can give to them when it comes down to monetization?
Shop. Look around, because there are networks out there that are looking for podcasts. They're constantly looking. Whether or not they tell you they are, they're always looking. Find somebody at a podcast agency, whether it's Audio Boom or Midroll. Midroll's amazing. I've heard great things about them. Podcast One. They're all looking for more content because that's what this has become now. It's competition to have the best and most content. So put something out that's great, care about it, believe in it, put everything that you can into it, and everything that you put into it, you're going to get out of it. So if you put as much as you can into it and look for the right people to be on your team, you're going to be successful. It's just a matter of caring and doing it.
Okay. Well, Jimmie, thank you so much for coming on in. I appreciate you sitting with me for a few minutes. Thank you for coming on in and telling us a little bit about monetization. I'm going to have a couple more videos for all of you guys out there to let you know more about monetization and other opportunities of how you can monetize your podcast. Again, Jimmie Whisman from Crime Sports. We'll talk to you soon.
Good luck, guys.